FLOWBENCH, 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 FLOWBENCH. Are you tired of hearing that yet? Well, I just watched the video a while ago on YouTube, and I got tired of hearing it about the third time I heard it within a minute. So, I'm so tired of guys on YouTube acting like if you do a head without a FLOWBENCH, you're in trouble. So, I'm going to just name a couple of heads that I've done without a FLOWBENCH, but have been flow tested for numbers due to the customer persistent because they needed to know what that head flowed. But after they got the flow numbers, did it make the car any faster? Did it make it run any better? That's always my point. You guys on FLOWBENCH's chasing numbers and keeping needling at stuff and hogging things out on the side that doesn't need to be touched because you're looking for a number. All you're doing is hurting that head. You guys can think what you want to. That's my opinion. This is my opinion about that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of Terry's experience. And some of these heads I had nothing to do with. But I'm going to start out with my friend's car from 30 years ago. A Camaro with a standard bore 454 with a pair of iron heads. He switched from the iron heads to a pair of Brodak heads and only picked up 1/10 of a second. So that's after he had to have the heads milled and to equal the iron heads, because when he first put the Brodak heads on, the motor just took a dive. We never tested the horsepower rating to see exactly what it was, but we're going to do better than that. We're going to talk about how fast that car went. So anyway, without a FLOWBENCH, and my friend having the valve job done to them Brodak heads and bringing them around to where that engine sounded like it did before with the steel heads, he had a very good ear on him, so don't laugh at that. Okay? And I don't think you're going to laugh at this number, because that car could still compete in today's street car stuff. That car with a standard bore 454 with a tunnel ram, a roller camshaft, 700 lift, a little bit bigger than 700 lift. That car ran 790 at 170 in the quarter mile. So that's with no FLOWBENCH. Now, I did a pair of LS heads a while back without a FLOWBENCH and did what the guy kind of wanted me to. He was telling me he didn't want a full-blown race head, so he was going to drive on the street. So I did the heads according to how he kind of gave me a baseline what he wanted out of the heads. So I did them according to what I thought he was looking for, and he took them and had them flow tested, which I don't care what they flow. But they were LS Cathedral heads, and on that bench they flowed 320. So, and he took them and had them tested on another bench, and they made a little bit less on that bench, but I can't remember what it was, 5 or 6 or 8 CFMs less on a different bench. That's what I say. One bench to the other, both professional shops, 2 of the top guys around, and 2 different FLOWBENCH numbers. So there you go. So no matter what bench that head came off of and whatever number they got, that car is going to run exactly the same regardless of who had the high FLOWBENCH number and who had the lower one. The head's going to run exactly the same on that vehicle. So that's number 2. Forgive me for how I feel about this stuff. If you like FLOWBENCHs, that's fine. They do help in some cases, but people take it to the extreme, and it really bothers me when they try to act like a regular guy can't do a pair of heads because he don't have it. Now here's the thing. Who had FLOWBENCHs back in the day when all these guys were setting records? When all these super stock guys get their cars to go 9s with standard parts. How many of them guys had flow benches back 30 years ago? So that was fast back then, by the way. And some guys ran faster. So anyway, I just did a pair of heads, as you guys know, where I said the car would run 1070s. How would I know that without a flow bench? Is that just a guess on my part? No. It's because I knew that that engine was going to make around 530 horsepower with what I was doing to them heads without the flow bench. So they were not flow tested, but they're track proven. And that car can actually go 2/10 faster. Hasn't done it, but I don't own the car. And the guy is happy with how it is already. And he doesn't want to do certain things to the vehicle, because it's not a race car, it's a driving street vehicle. And that's how he wants it. So it could be faster than that. And it's in a 3,400 pound car. So that's respectable in my book. So anyway, I did a pair of LS heads for our own car. And my son took the car out on his draggy, and he had to let off and get on the brakes, but he figured it all out in his head like he normally does, and mathematically he came back and said, "Dad, that car really flies." It was a 5.3 engine with the heads I done and a standard off-the-shelf cam, and the intake that nobody likes, that Holly intake that they say is down 50 horsepower from the Victor intake. So that's what the combination was. But here's the number that car put down. Was a 1020 to a 10.0. So my son left a little bit of a leeway there, which should come to me, and between him and I, he said the car's in the 9s. And if it wasn't, it would have been there once we tuned things in. So, needless to say, that little LS, it didn't want to kind of make it like our 302s do. It kind of gave out a little bit. It was a junkyard engine. Out of a few cars. You don't never know how hard something's going to beat up before you get your hands on it when you have an engine handed down to you. So that's that engine, that combination. So this is just a few right off the top of my head, and believe me, if I wanted to sit down and do a paper on this, I could probably have a list of at least 10. But I just thought about this, I just saw this video, I'm doing this randomly here, just sitting there thinking, you know, these guys are going to scare somebody off from doing their own stuff in their own garage that want to try to port a pair of heads, because they're going to think, well, I don't have a flow bench to test this stuff. I don't have all this fancy equipment. I'm going to tell you right now, fellas, you do the basics, you use common sense, and you'll be closer than you think you will if you use common sense. And you don't always have to get this information out of one book. There's more than one guy off of YouTube that knows a few things. And back in the day, there was a few fellows that wrote some books, and they knew what they were talking about. The thing is, when they tested something, they went to the track, and you went with them, and you seen the article how fast the car went. It's like Joe Sherman. You want to see something, look up Joe Sherman, and he could prove what he would say. He did a article years ago about a 350, said he would go 10 seconds with that car on pump gas and drive home, and it didn't just barely go 10s. The car was like way in the cellar of the 10s, if I remember right. 1040s, 1060s, something like that. I'm going back in the 70s here, so, or 80s, bear with me. But this is just some of the things that you can do without a flow bench. Now, Joe Sherman, he did test things and do things, but he didn't depend on all that only. My point is, these guys are trying to make you think because you don't have a flow bench, you're incapable of doing a pair of heads correctly. But I'll tell you what, you Einsteins that have the benches out there and you want to kind of look down on guys that don't have a bench, look around you, because there's a lot of fellas out there you see going down that track that don't have a flow bench, and their cars are just fine. Matter of fact, they might be the ones that you can't get by. I see that quite a bit, and that's the truth. So, food for thought. If I have any sarcasm here, I'm sorry, but truth is the truth, and sometimes the truth will set you free, and other times the truth hurts. So, depending on what side of the coin you are on this. My point is this. There's guys that are just strictly flow bench guys, and go ahead. Go by that rule of thumb, and I want to see exactly how fast the cars are. Because that's one thing you don't see on these guys that do all this talking about flow benches and stuff. You don't see the car, and if you do, I've seen two of the two top guys on YouTube, and guess what? The two top guys that brag about their heads and what kind of head service they have and what they do, both their own vehicles that they take to the track, and one guy brags his up, so he was the fastest car there. So this one's an 11-second car, the fastest car in a racetrack. And the only other car there was as fast as him is a car that he did the heads for on that same level. But yet the other guy that was faster than him didn't have his camshaft. So, and he's the guru of the camshaft mathematics. So, I can't figure that out. How could that guy be going faster with his own cam when yet you're the guru of knowing how to pick cams out? That's another discussion for another time. I'm tired of the hype, guys. People want to follow that and swallow that. That's up to them. But I'm not doing it. You know, sometimes you sit back and you take some things in and you start evaluating things and they don't make sense. When you look at a guy on YouTube and he says, oh, I'm going to give you 20 horsepower here, 20 horsepower there, 3 horsepower here, this is worth 100 horsepower. When you figure it out, and he has a small block that would be making 700 horsepower, and yet his car runs 11s, food for thought. That's all I'll say. So with that, this is Terry's little way of thinking. Inside how I feel and how I think. So, it don't make me right, it's just my opinion. And no one's going to change it. Not when I have vehicles out there that run the way that they run, which I think is a teeny little bit above average, in my opinion. For the combinations these cars have, they're doing extremely well. And I know there's always going to be a guy say, well, I know a guy that just did a valve job and he went 1050s. I know. Because that's possible. With the right combination, some guys are going to be a little bit above average tuning and things like that. You have to keep that in mind, because that's everything in this world which we live too when it comes to heads. Whenever you do a head, if you think you're going to keep your carburetor the same, you think that signal's the same, or your fuel curve with injection or anything like that, you better think again, because if you just get a pair of heads done and stick them on your vehicle and keep that all the same, you're losing horsepower. I'll add that in there. So with that, I want to tell you guys thanks for checking me out. I always appreciate that. Thanks to new subscribers. Thank you guys that have been with me forever. And I'll talk to you later.